Gatsby turned out to be all right in the end. It was what preyed on Gatsby, what foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams that temporarily closed out my interest in the abortive sorrows and short-winded elations of men.
Hans vlogs, but not necessarily every day.
Well, Baz Luhrmann did not disappoint. As someone who recently read the book, I can tell you that this film is an incredibly faithful representation of the novel The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. It's all there, from the green light at the end of Daisy's Dock to her baby that you hardly ever see and barely hear about. Leonardo DiCaprio is a dynamite Gatsby, the self-made man who is at once both confident and shy, both proud of his accomplishments and ashamed of his shady dealings. And Tobey Maguire strikes just the right note as Nick Carraway, the guy who moves into the tiny house next door to Gatsby's mansion and relates the whole story. He's wide-eyed, young and optimistic, an outsider who can appreciate and marvel at the wealth and opulence of East and West Egg, Long Island, in a way that the wealthy denizens of these islands cannot. The one big thing that Baz Luhrmann has changed from the book, he's added a framing element. He has an older Nick Carraway in a sanitarium, suffering from alcoholism, relating the whole story to his psychiatrist, who encourages him to write it all down. And this is different from the book, where in the end Nick just sort of went on with his life. Now in the film, he's so traumatized by the tragic irony, or ironic tragedy, of everything that happened that he can only recover by putting it all down into this great American novel. That's a little bit cute, but it does give the film license to go deep into the actual language of the novel, that without this device might seem a little bit over the top. And it's beautiful text, so I'm glad they managed to keep so much of it in. So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. Stuff like that. It's almost too faithful to the book. Like there's no way you're going to miss how that green light at the end of Daisy's Dock is such a hopeful, powerful beacon to Gatsby. They mention it like 4 times. Okay, so in this movie, Baz Luhrmann creates a world that is both vivid and magical. The giant beautiful houses, the cars, the incredible parties, the flowers, the servants everywhere. There's a certain dreaminess to it all, like it's been constructed in layers by some digital artist. The camera swoops around for impossible shots across the bay and in and out of houses and through period New York skyscrapers and along bridges with cars bombing along. This is all clearly a digital construction, like you would see in a Zack Snyder film like Sucker Punch or The Watchmen. But when you get in there deep to the details, it all feels real. From Gatsby's tailored shirts, to the ash pits of Long Island, to his inlaid monograms on the polished floors of Gatsby's mansion. So lush. Oh. Now, since the main arc of the plot is Nick Carraway finding out about Gatsby, where he comes from and what he's all about, talking about any of this is kind of spoilerish. But suffice to say, The Great Gatsby is a story about class in America. About how a man with nothing can build himself up. But how his obsession can keep him from being happy. And how some bad luck can ruin everything. And how the sins we end up paying for are not necessarily our own. And really how the past is the past, and no matter what your resources, you can't necessarily ever get what you want. Now I'm making it sound like a drag, and it does have a downer ending, as does Moulin Rouge, as you might remember, but it's a dazzling ride. There are some laughs and some joyous moments, and the imagery is so lush. And when I say imagery, I don't just mean it's pretty. I mean you feel like you are there, witnessing the spectacle firsthand. The 3D somehow makes it feel more realistic and more dreamlike at the same time. Okay, if I had to come up with a negative for this film, I would say it takes a little while to get going. And some things get repeated a few too many times, as if they're worried you're going to miss some of the symbolism. But I was never bored. And then there's the music. I was talking the other day about how Baz Luhrmann likes to use modern music in his period films to give us the same feeling of newness that the people of, let's say, the Jazz Age, for example, would have felt the first time they heard jazz, which was very modern and interesting. And in this picture, Jay-Z does the music, and there's a veneer of hip-hop whenever there's live music, but to me it doesn't quite work. It's just a flavoring of hip-hop trying to fit in with the jazz, and it never really takes hold the way the Can-Can did in that cool number in Moulin Rouge. The music seems to be kind of apologizing for itself, trying not to be too intrusive with this modern gimmick. It never really commits to the form, and when we are meant to be marveling at New York City, we hear good old George Gershwin with no new treatment at all, just like in countless films before. And I mean, it works. When you hear Rhapsody in Blue, which was from 1924, exactly contemporary with this story, it's more exciting and provocative than any of that Jay-Z stuff. Anyway, These are just minor criticisms. I think this film was great. I'd even see it again if you asked me. People in the theater were applauding at the end, and this film does not end with an exploding Death Star or something that makes you feel like cheering. And it's made something like 50, 60, I don't know, $70 million this weekend. So yeah, people are liking it. But if by some chance you are waiting for my review to decide whether or not to see it, well, go for it. I give it 4.5 out of 5 tiny stormtroopers. And while I didn't leave the theater leaping and cheering, it's still a staggering work of filmmaking. And it'll be the last word on The Great Gatsby for many decades to come. And don't worry about sequels. See it. You'll know why. I hope you enjoy these. Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe and all that jazz. Oh, hey, did you know that The Curious Case of Benjamin Button was also a story written by F. Scott Fitzgerald?